Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us today. My name is Laura Kim, and I am a technology consultant for SNL International. Before I start, I just want to address a couple of housekeeping items. Please make sure you're all on mute, but I think maybe Heidi did that for everyone. And there is a chat box for any questions you would like to ask, and there's somebody monitoring that, and we will answer all of those questions at the end. So again, good morning. For those people, some of you might know SNL, some may not. So for those who do not, we are a technology consulting company. We are based in Arcadia, and we've been there for over 23 years. At SNL, our goal with our clients is to always make sure that their data and their critical business applications are not only secure, but are also highly available. We take a holistic approach when we, approach our clients' needs, and
to allow us to use multiple groups to separate users.
I think, okay, there we go. Our three main areas of focus at SNL are Microsoft and network infrastructure, backup and disaster recovery, and security solutions. Those are kind of our three sweet spots that we play in. You can go to the next slide, please. We are an engineering-centric company, and I will say hands down that is truly what sets us apart. We have over 18 highly skilled and knowledgeable engineers, and they really are the makeup and the foundation of this company. I think one of our first engineers that started with the company is still here today, so that says a lot. All of our engineers have training and certifications in all the solutions that we provide. So we can do everything from implementation to post support. So we're there for our clients from the beginning to the end. It's not like, oh, here you go, we're done, but we're there for our clients throughout the whole process, even after. Our goal is, I know as a consultant for me, is to become a trusted partner with my client. So we'd like to be there in the beginning part of any project because we want to help plan, vision, and build it out with you. At SNL, we do not take a cookie cutter approach because we know that no two environments are the same. So we offer customized solutions for all of our clients and their specific environment needs. And our number one goal is to obviously make our clients happy, but is to ensure that we minimize costs and we're building efficiencies every step of the project. And how we do that is through constant communication, both with our clients and internally as a team. So you'll always be up to date, and we'll always try and foresee things before they happen, be proactive versus reactive. So in a nutshell, that's kind of who we are at SNL. We work with different partners, but one of our strongest partners that we work with is Palo Alto Networks, who you'll be hearing from today. And so in saying that, I would like now to introduce the Palo Alto team. Thomas Cochran, he is a regional account manager for Southern California, and Thomas Lee is his systems engineer. So guys, I'm gonna let you guys take it away now.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Laura. I just actually received a direct message from JT, cannot hear anything.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, it's odd because I can hear. Can another guest input into the chat and validate whether they can hear us? I want to ensure that that's not the case.
Oh, me too. Oh, I see like Romel on there. Romel, are you able to hear us?
Okay, looks like we just I just received confirmation. So JT, I apologize. Maybe perhaps try logging off and maybe log back in. And once again, I do apologize.
Yeah, so do I.
Well, excellent. And Thomas Lee, you can hear me as well, correct?
Absolutely.
Receive another chat.
Absolutely, I can hear you fine.
Okay, and I did receive confirmation that another individual can hear. So we're off to the races here. I apologize, JT. It does appear that challenge is unique to you, so forgive us. Excellent, and you folks can see my screen. So like I said, we're off to the races. As Laura mentioned, I greatly appreciate everyone joining today. My name's Tom Cochran. I work in parallel with SNL to support a number of clients here in Los Angeles as well as Orange County. I think from our perspective, the focus of today's conversation is really going to be focused or centered around the convergence of networking and security. We're finding that the two topics or subsets are becoming more and more congruent and sort of synonymous. to that end, what we're hoping to accomplish today is to expand on how we're enabling organizations to be more nimble in providing things like fast applications, but doing so in a much more secure manner. So this is we'll say, I refer to it as sort of the new frontier in networking and security. Gartner refers to this particular space or this convergence of networking and security as secure access service edge. So say that 5 times fast, right? I certainly can't, but in a nutshell, it's referred to, or it's been dubbed as SASE. What it really boils down to is 2 specific technologies bundled together. The first being a cloud-delivered security platform, so Firewall as a service, and secondarily, an SD-WAN technology. And under SASE, the two must be married. In my estimation, if you actually sit down and read the lengthy Gartner Magic Quadrant, the Gartner report on SASE, not necessarily the Magic Quadrant, the pain that has really led to the impetus for this space really stems from applications being hosted outside the data center. What that generally in turn does is it creates slow applications, it compromises security, and those 2 things generally very much impact the business. What we're seeing in the field now is there are many vendors bringing a SASE product to market. The vast majority of those folks are taking a bolt-on or a Frankenstein-based approach. So for instance, you're seeing someone like a Zscaler teaming with a Silver Peak, right? So 2 kind of niche point products or disparate technologies forming an alliance. And when I see something like that, and when I chat with IT directors, CIOs, network folks, my question is, what's the cost of having to manage and maintain multiple point products? What's the cost of having to maintain a complex solution? What's unique, and we'll double click into this here in a moment, but what's unique about Palo Alto Networks technology or approach to the SASE space is we offer a single and an integrated platform with one-touch integration rather than 2 UIs from 2 unique vendors. And in some cases, 3 vendors. So before we talk about product, I think it's always good to contextualize things, sort of set the stage, if you will. Let's talk about, again, really the use cases and maybe some of the driving factors that are serving as a catalyst to, again, bring about this new SASE model that we all continue to hear about. First and foremost is security. Now more than ever, organizations have folks working from home, in the field. COVID certainly magnified that. I'd contend that many individuals are never going back to an office. I can speak to that firsthand. My wife works for Salesforce, and their CEO, Mark Benioff, came out 2 weeks ago and said, after COVID, once everyone's vaccinated and once we receive some level of normalcy, folks will only be required to go back into the office 2 to 3 days a week, and in some cases, or for some roles, 1 day a week. So what this in turn has done is it's created a far greater emphasis on organizations' VPNs. And when we generally solicit feedback or garner feedback from folks, what they typically tell us is their VPNs have some shortcomings, particularly speaking from a cloud perspective, so SaaS-based applications. So what I can tell you firsthand is I worked in an organization for 8-9 years prior to Palo Alto Networks, and we leveraged Salesforce. Again, I keep bringing up Salesforce, but it's simply put, it's a popular SaaS-based application. So I'm going to use it as an example. I would go in, I would log in my CRM, aka Salesforce, and I knew every time I logged into Salesforce, I had to turn off my VPN because it was extremely slow. So the question fundamentally and always becomes, for an organization, do I put more emphasis on security, or do I put more weight or speed on? Do I put more weight on speed and performance? That's kind of the age-old conundrum for IT directors. Frankly, it can be pretty difficult to obtain both with a conventional VPN. So let's sort of play out, I suppose, and Thomas Lee, you can shed a little bit of additional light on this, but 2 scenarios here. Scenario 1, a user logs into the VPN. He or she connects to a cloud-based application like Workday, like Salesforce, et cetera, like Office 365. And prior to egress, all that traffic sent back to the data center, it's going to be inspected by the castle and the moat. That's where it's going to get inspected, within the four walls of the data center. Naturally, this scenario favors security, but at the expense of speed and performance, because as a user, like I just referenced, when I'm logging into that SaaS-based application, I'm incurring all that latency from the backhauling, that hairpinning effect. As a result, what I'm generally going to do as a user, I'm just going to log right off the VPN. So the purpose of a VPN is to provide security, but now it's become completely nullified as a result, or by virtue of that slow application. Scenario 2, we see a lot of customers employing split tunneling, which certainly has its distinct benefits. The model very much favors speed and performance at the expense of security. So, for instance, I'm only going to send the stuff that's coming back to the data center and have security around that. If my users at home and they have traffic going directly to the internet, we're going to split tunnel that off from the source, which means we don't overrun our data center and infrastructure. Now my security team doesn't have security and visibility into that traffic, and candidly, we're really relying on our endpoint for security. So, long rant there, but it's important to provide context and kind of the pain points that many folks are facing today. If I'm in an IT director's shoes, the question ultimately and fundamentally becomes, is there a way to provide speed and performance? So the old cliche is kind of have your cake and eat it too. In a word, the answer is yes. So this is really where our firewall as a service comes into play. Sorry, I didn't know if there was a question there. And Heidi, would you mind muting all the attendees? And folks, if you do have a question, happy to field those. Feel free to input them in the box or in the chat box. So as I mentioned, there is a way to ensure there is a way to eliminate that hairpinning and backhauling, and conversely also eliminate split tunneling and again provide security as well as speed. And this is done through our firewall as a service, aka Prisma Access. So in short, Prisma Access is a top to bottom firewall that lives in the cloud, and since it resides in the cloud, it has limitless scale. And I'm a little bit of a nerd, so I love the fact that it has infinite scale, and I want to unpack that a little bit. It's the facet that I can appreciate the most, and I'll like I said, I'll table that for a moment. As a mobile user, the moment I VPN in, my traffic's sent to a gateway or a node in the cloud, and thereafter my internet traffic gets scrubbed. The only traffic going back to the data center in this scenario is if something is deliberately destined for the data center. So, like if they're actually trying to access an application hosted in the DC, for instance, the beauty is the security policy follows me regardless of where I go. And when I say regardless of where I go, I mean anywhere in the world. Like if you have a C-level executive traveling, operating under normal in the normal world, traveling worldwide, this security policy follows me. And since all my traffic's being pointed to a firewall residing in a regional POP or point of presence, there's no hairpinning or backhauling to the castle and the moat, aka the data center, for security purposes. Thus, as a user, I don't have to jump on and off my VPN to obtain better speed. Last point I'll make, and then I'll hand it over to Thomas Lee a little bit here. But with Prisma, one of the things that we commonly hear is, well, I don't want to get rid of my hardware firewall because we have a best of breed Palo Alto Networks firewall, and it'd be crazy to go away from that. We need all of the functionality that we have with our hardware on-prem box, whether that be a 1U box, a 2U box, whatever it may be. Here's the beauty. Prisma Access, or AKA our firewall as a service that is residing in the cloud, has complete one-to-one feature parity. So it's the same OS, same UI. We manage the updates. You as the user, you as the network guy or gal, or security guy or gal, has all of the firewall features that you're used to and you're familiar with. So SSL decryption, TLS decryption, DNS, DLP, zero trust. What's different is the consumption model and the form factor. Malware sandboxing, all that stuff. So I'll pause there for a moment. Thomas, what I'm gonna do next is get into kind of the next flavor of Prisma Access, which is obviously we spoke a lot about the remote user use case, but I want to talk about the consolidation play here, and I'll touch on that in a moment, right? More kind of this piece. We're focusing more on the mobile right now. Thomas, anything that I misrepresented or you'd like to expand on potentially when it comes to mobile users and our firewall as a service?
Yeah, so just adding a little bit more context here. So one of the things that I think you may have already brought this thing up, this next gen firewall service is dedicated for the customer's environment. This is not a shared service. That's one of the things that we need to point out very distinctively, right? Earlier, Tom, you mentioned, one of our competitors like Zscaler. Most of their stuff are more share-based services. And what I mean by that is just like you mentioned about the upgrades and patch all the maintenance on the firewall. That is done by Palo Alto. So this piece of it is 100%. The policy is controlled by the customer themselves, meaning you can set, whether the end user can go and what they can access, right? All the control point is right at this level here, right? And that is done by the customer. But most importantly is that the firewall's maintenance, updates, and patches and all that stuff is handled strictly by Palo Alto. So as a customer, this is literally a turnkey solution, right? You turn it on, you connect it up to the mobile user, and the mobile user is really simple. All you need to do is just deploy the GP, the Global Protect client. It's just a VPN client, right? And all they do is that the administrator can dictate how much interaction does the end user have with this piece of it. Meaning you can turn on things like always on VPN. The customer, the end user, the minute they fire up the laptop, right, their mobile devices, all they need to do is that they're going to go straight out to the internet and they're being protected. Very minimal interactions. If you want the end user to log in, so that as a secondary phase, to authenticate, you can do that. So all the interactions between the cloud and the end user is really up to the administrators' sort of requirements, right? But then, yeah, that's it. That's all I have. Just
no, thanks a lot. I think that far more eloquent than I am. So, and just to give everyone perspective, Thomas and I have been working together for 9 years, so very much in tune, I suppose, and aligned. I appreciate it, Thomas.
No worries.
I know I really emphasized the mobile use case here, but Prisma Access has the ability to address consolidation for folks looking to go a bit thinner at their branch sites. So this is a really popular use case, particularly if you have folks or organizations that are looking to go as stateless as possible at the branch, or you may not have someone to, say an individual who can even rack cable or IP a box. So with Prisma Access, regarding the branch use case model, we have the ability to use your existing router, SD-WAN device, anything like Vitello, VeloCloud, a router, anything that can establish an IPsec tunnel. Of course, we like to see you use our SD-WAN service, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but we are vendor agnostic on that front. And essentially what we'll do is we'll utilize that device to build an IPsec tunnel into the cloud and allow you to consume this firewall as a service. Again, it allows you to go completely stateless from a firewall perspective. So Thomas and I actually have a customer. We'll call them they play in the real estate space for malls. So they manage about 50 malls in the United States. And we're talking about their deployment, and they were thinking about adding 820s to all their sites, to all their branch sites. And for those of you who are not familiar, 820s are somewhat smaller boxes. And the IT director goes, well, Tom, I want to add these 820s, but here's my challenge. Here's the rub for me. The rub is well, and right now I have a DS3 at each site. I have 45 megs or maybe even 100 megs at each site. In 2 years, I'm going to be able to get a gig there, 2 gigs there, because bandwidth is going for pennies on the dollar. And he goes, now I know I'm only as good as my weakest link. What I don't want to do is spend 200-300 grand in the form of a capital expenditure, and then 2 years later have to go rip and replace. And oh, by the way, I also want to do SSL decryption on these boxes. So right now, these 820s, they're probably sufficient for my network and my needs. But in 2-3 years, when we add that link, when we add that throughput, or excuse me, add that link speed or increase the circuit speed, and we want to do SSL decryption, now I'm beholden. I'm shackled to an 820 with a finite and a fixed throughput. So I mentioned the scalability of Prisma Access. This is the real beauty of it. You have limitless scale because we're residing in the cloud. So just in sum, when it comes to Prisma Access, you really accomplish a few things for an organization, because you now have security. You can scale dynamically and on the fly, and you have speed to support 100% of your mobile workforce. It's purchased through imagine a bucket or a grand sum total of your aggregated circuit speed. So you simply would approach your Palo Alto Networks account manager and say, listen, I need this much. We want to scale up this year, or conversely, we want to scale down. So really slick, really elegant. Okay, and again, we'll feel free to input questions. I know most of us have likely standardized with some sort of hardware-based firewall at a branch site. So this kind of requires folks to view firewalling in a sense through a different prism. The second piece to this, and I suppose firewall as a service absolutely provides security. However, when it comes to SASE, again, kind of fun to say, when it comes to SASE, that's really only one piece of the puzzle. The other component is SD-WAN. So with SD-WAN, the objective is really to provide business agility in the form of connectivity, orchestration, automation, all of those sort of things. There's a few things really driving the adoption of SD-WAN, and what's interesting is SD-WAN, the underlying technology has really been around for a long time. IPsec tunnels, policy-based routing, it's really not anything new. It's really a bundling of those pre-existing technologies into a UI, so you can employ the usage of things like automation and orchestration, et cetera, et cetera. So I would argue that the environment in which we live is highly fertile for things like adoption of SD-WAN, and reason being, particularly even more so when folks go back to the office. MPLS is extremely costly. That's no secret. Everyone on the call knows that. You can get DIA and broadband for pennies on the dollar. We just alluded to that moments ago when we were talking about Prisma Access or Firewall as a service. But you can't, last time I checked, you can't apply QoS markings and enforce SLAs on the greater internet. The other challenge folks face and is really operational inefficiencies. Just everyday mundane tasks associated with managing a network. So, for instance, if you're looking to enable inter-office communication, or rather intra-office communication for things like SIP trunking or VoIP, right, voice over IP, it can be extremely difficult. Building a mesh manually, especially if you have a lot of tunnels, if you have redundancy within your circuits. Thomas and I were just talking to a customer the other day, and he goes, "Listen, I want SD-WAN because I don't want to have to hire another CCIE, right? Routing updates on my network is not a trivial task." So Thomas and I worked at an SD-WAN vendor for 8 years prior to Palo Alto Networks, and the markets, when we look at the wide area network, the market's really evolved over the last 7-8 years. So we started with kind of this, and I mean, when I'm talking about the WAN, I'm talking about performance issues relative to the WAN. So we kind of saw, okay, the likes of WAN optimization, right? A bookend or a symmetric approach for chatty applications, for things like SIFs and SMB traffic, et cetera, to combat latency. And then bandwidth got really, really cheap, so it was great. And then you saw folks like Talari come along, right, with like the quality of path and link aggregation. We'll call it SD-WAN light, if you will. My words, of course, not anyone else's. Then you saw folks like Silver Peak with kind of like WAN optimization and pseudo SD-WAN with tunnels, right? Kind of like first iterations of SD-WAN. And then you saw VeloCloud and Vitello, right? And they were standalone devices, but then they got gobbled up by Cisco and VMware. Sort of, again, we'll call them first generation SD-WAN OEMs or vendors. Really packet-based or layer 3, layer 4 based SD-WAN. So coming from that background, Thomas and I have seen the industry evolve or the market evolve. And what I will tell you is Prisma SD-WAN is unique in its approach. And the reason I say that, and when I say Prisma SD-WAN, I'm referring to Cloudgenx, for those of you who may or may not know. A few things really pop out to me about Palo Alto Networks SD-WAN. Most SD-WAN devices are layer 3, like I mentioned, but what's great about our flavor of SD-WAN is the layer 7 visibility. So for instance, app response time, jitter, packet loss. You're doing anything like Citrix VDI, print job issues, keystroke jitterness, latency, round trip times. All that information is being used by us to deliver the best possible experience for your users so they can be productive, so they can drive top line revenue, so they can get products to market, so you can convert non-performing assets to cash, right? Like those are all the things we think about. And what we're doing is we're using algorithms based on those particular those particular metrics that I just mentioned to automate networking functions. So we do see a cost savings by getting rid of MPLS, but in my eyes, from an SD-WAN perspective, that's very much table stakes requirement. Palo Alto Networks philosophy is we take that a step further. Having that layer 7 visibility, we can enable those applications to be lightning fast and reduce trouble tickets, right? Because it's all about reducing mean time to resolution, mean time to innocence. We all know, everyone on the call knows who's guilty when there's a performance issue. It's always the network guy. You got to go to Wireshark. You got to look at the CLI. You got to look at the ASCII tag. It's not fun. So I talked about automating functions. I like customer stories because I think they resonate with folks. Like one size does not fit all, but I believe if you put 30 networking folks in a room together, you'd probably all be saying 3 things that are very similar, like at a very macro level, right? So Thomas and I have a customer. They have a single ISP provider for all their locations. Something happened that took that provider down. So IT director calls 20, this is again, brick and mortar retail. So he calls every GM at every one of these stores and he goes, hey, your internet's down. Okay, well, these guys, pardon my French, they're SOL, right? Because if their internet's down, their POS is down. They can't conduct business. It just so happened that Thomas and I happened to be doing a POC with Prisma SD-WAN at one particular branch. The IT director calls that manager and he goes, hey, your internet's down. He goes, no, dude. He goes, we're good. I don't know what you're talking about. Hangs up the phone. Everyone's kind of scratching their head, right? Well, what happened was at that particular site, when the primary circuit became unhealthy, started having issues, it intuitively failed to LTE to the cradle point based on those metrics because of our devices. So every other site in their network went down. The company lost thousands of dollars. That one site that was POCing us had no disruption of service. So the failover happened automatically. And what's really nice is as it became healthy, it defaulted back to the preferred link, aka the broadband in this situation. So it's really slick. One last thing that I will say, and then I promise I'll put a muzzle on myself and let Thomas talk. My wife says I talk too much. She's probably right. The absolute greatest feature of this particular solution, and I'm not just now referring to SD-WAN, but the greatest value add or value proposition that we have here is you're now marrying your network and your security. You're very much, by doing that, you're very much simplifying your stack because you have one-click integration. So the nice benefit is the single point of management is by using the SD-WAN and integrating your firewalls, you can selectively on a per app, per user basis, decide which apps are going to be inspected into Prisma Access. So even from one branch to another, you can have it inspected. It's really slick. As you can see, I'm pretty passionate, so I get a little too excited. Thomas makes fun of me. Okay, Thomas, I'll stop talking.
No, you're doing fine, man. There's a lot of stuff here that obviously.
I'm rolling, man. I'm rolling.
No, I mean, just kind of within this slide here, just kind of adding on to what Tom is stating so far is if you look at this topology here, you know, the traditional stuff. Here's a data center, right? And then of course this is Prisma Access, right? And then here is the sort of called the SD-WAN solution, which is right over here, right? If you look at the two things that sort of combine, and then you guys can see my draw. Tom, can you see the arrows?
Yeah, it looks like, yeah, you're pink.
Yeah,
pink arrow.
So essentially, so if you look at this piece is the Cloudgenx piece, right? And then of course, or the SD-WAN component, right? And then of course, the next gen firewall services are now looking at, you know, sitting in the cloud, known as Prisma Access here. This is the access point, right? So the connectivity piece that we keep talking about is this component right over here, right? Coming into here, right? So that's the connectivity piece, and that's the SD-WAN component going back into the data center, right? And then of course, why do we have this, you know, tertiary line directly into the cloud? Well, now what you can tell is that with the SD-WAN, Prisma Access SD-WAN, what you're allowing this point or the branch level to do is actually control the application, how the application needs to traverse either through the private side, which is your SD-WAN fabric, or if it needs to go to the public side, it needs to be able to actually go through the security scrutiny, if you will, right? Running through the firewall as a service, all the way to IPS checks to, you know, if you want to enable CASB functionalities to your SaaS application, to all the way down to really coming down to here, DLP. It's another one. I'm not sure if folks are, probably most folks are familiar with what DLP is, but this is known as your data leakage, you know, prevention, right? Things like PII information, PCI information. Well, that stuff shouldn't leave the internet, go into the internet or being pulled down by the internet, period. Right? But if you have to, because that data exists in your cloud infrastructure, you can actually run it through the entire security stack on access and actually do any kind of prevention if you choose to, monitoring if you want to. And then of course, let's say you need to allow that stuff to happen, not because you want to, but the business dictates that, hey, let's run it through the entire battery of tests, right? For security, making sure that it complies to your, you know, whatever the agency or the compliance and regulatory agencies that you have to do with things like PII, HIPAA, that type of data. And then, you know what? So what if they hide behind this SSL decryption? We want to know, or SSL, we will decrypt that packet and making sure that we can see inside the payload, and that payload doesn't contain, you know what, personalized information or IP information. We can block that off, right? This is very powerful. Now you notice the shift. This still happens in your data center if you choose to keep that infrastructure, but that is moving directly over to here. And with Tom, with our customer base, you know, we are seeing this shift. Not only in our customer base, but we're seeing across the entire Palo Alto's customer base. They're moving directly into this SaaS model. Why? Because you have look at the ROI here, right? And some folks, you know, some of the customers out there still have MPLS, which is somewhat of a legacy, you know, piece of technology, right? And then of course the cost of maintaining that, you're reducing a lot of your IT footprint, you know, especially hardware down to the branch or data center level. You know, I just had another customer that I was working on this week, as a matter of fact, where when I look at the branch, if you look at the branch side of the house, they got router, okay, and then they have another router. This is going to Internet 1, what provider 1, provider 2, and this side of the house, they go to the MPLS side of the house. With the SD-WAN fabric, we take that, reduced it down to what? 2 devices. For redundancy, remember, there are, looking at this, there's router here, 2 routers here, 2 routers here, and another firewall down here. We took all of that out, cancel all that out, and put 2 ION devices in there for failover, and give them all the security requirements that they need, and satisfy this. And we actually reduce a tremendous amount of cost associated with maintaining the old legacy systems, right? Hopefully, I know there's a lot of chicken scratch going on here, but hopefully that makes sense to everyone here.
Hey,
Well,
Thomas,
back to you, Tom.
we actually just got I think that's tremendous insight, Thomas.
Yeah.
We just received a question.
Yeah.
Carl is holding our feet to the fire here.
Yeah.
Is it possible to force iPhone users to route their web and app traffic to Prisma Access? If so, how?
Yes. So the way you would do that. So the mobile device in the previous slides suggests laptops. Yeah, this device here could be we support Windows operating system, iOS devices, mobile devices. We're all supported here, and then of course with there we can actually enforce through, especially with iPhones, right? You can actually enforce with your MDM solution, enforce an always on VPN tunnel directly into access, straight right into access. That's how you would do it.
Carl, let us know if there's any follow-up to that. I think that's a great question.
Okay, so
Folks,
I have
any,
a follow-up question to it.
Yeah.
So then,
Oh,
what
yeah,
if
go ahead, Carl.
users simply don't use the VPN agent, or the apps that you were talking about, and they just go directly to the internet? Like, is there a way to prevent that from happening?
So if there's no sort of the mobile profile on the iPhone or mobile devices, there's no way to force that traffic into Prisma Access, right? And if you now, it depends on, so a couple of things. That iPhone devices, are you talking about more generally the security aspect of it, or if the iPhone device is accessing more of some of your SaaS application, you want to control the SaaS application piece? Does that make sense, Carl?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry guys, I joined a bit late, but I have a question about my contractors and users that are not or privileged users. So how we can manage those on Prisma? Sorry, maybe you mentioned it, but I missed that part.
Yeah. So can you flip back on the other side? So your contractors, keep going. Yeah, right here is fine. So your contractors, a couple of things. Are they just, of course, these contractors, they're coming into your sort of your DC for applications, or do they come through your branch remote locations?
Yeah, for example, or audits guys that they need to have kind of access, but it's not, for example, access to or SASE. They want to put some files and take a look at there, and they are temporary, for example, work for 1 month, 2 months. So I think in that case, maybe we are not allowed to install agent on their laptop. So this is one of the issues, right?
So there's a concept called essentially you can actually, through this Prisma Access right here, Firewall, you can expose the application outside, right? So whatever the app here through the internet, and you can control, they can come through this direction, right? And then of course, whether this, call it, this is a branch, I realize that, but you can also flip it to a DC, where you can expose the application from the firewall front end, and you can control it that way.
Okay, like IP access or something like that.
Yeah. Either, so 2 things you can do is you can do some sort of authentication on this side, right, to control that piece. Regardless, right, unless they're general, if they want to get into your applications, they're going to have some sort of identity access control, right? They have to authenticate, right? So you can either one come through using the application itself. I'm not talking about installing any client on this client here. You don't need to install anything. You just expose the application to the front side, and the front side, which is right here. It's kind of like a reverse proxy design. If you're familiar.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey, we just got another question, Thomas.
Yeah.
Is there from John? And John, good to see you, my friend. Had Lou Malnati's the other night. I'm sure you can appreciate that. Anyway, is there a single session bandwidth limitation of the Prisma tunnel?
I'm sorry. What was the limitation?
Yeah. Is there a single session bandwidth limitation of the Prisma tunnel? So I think I know the answer to that, but I want you to take a shot at that.
No. There's no limitations there.
Any other questions, folks? I know a little time left. I think these are all great questions. Going once, twice, and Heidi, I know they're coming to you. Any others that I'm potentially not seeing?
Sorry, I joined late, so that's why.
Yeah.
About mobile device management, may I know how we can control the devices? What's the limitation we can set on the devices? Because I've seen lots of issues in this area, like they want to reach out to some resources, and we need to control, and the device types that they or even not only the users, the legit users. Some people come to the company and they want to use the internet. They have some traffic. See that there are lots of bad traffic from their mobile devices. So how we can control them?
So where's the user sitting? Are they? That's the most important piece.
Okay, yeah. For example, guest users. Okay, we have some guest users. They want to get into, or they are asking to get access to wireless. Absolutely, we have guest Wi-Fi, but by the way, how we can control them? And it's not only that. Some people, legit users like employees, they know the user pass and try to get into the wireless LAN because the bandwidth is unlimited on it. They use their personal devices there.
Sure.
They set, and that's one of my issues in order.
Sure, no problem. Tom, can you switch to the slide, I think 9, that topology in the next one? So this is a good one, right? You're assuming that you got your branch level, you have an AP out here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the users sort of are attaching directly into here, and then you have a VLAN somehow is attached to through, if we have this SD-WAN devices, it's going to set on its own separate VLANs, right? So you have two choices, right? One, you can send that traffic directly out to the internet if you choose to, or you can send directly that traffic into Prisma Access for security control, right? So when they get into here, you can actually authenticate the users. Hey, who's this user? Do they have any kind of user identity? If they don't, then you can give them a specific policy to say, you know what, if they're not identified, that means it's a guess. If it's a guess, and not only that, it's coming from the guest VLAN. Most importantly, they can actually have a certain type of policy, and that policy is, you know what, sometimes we'll block everything else, meaning the bad sites, but the end user can go into some of the banking sites, news sites, whatever the case may be, but you can block off the security stuff, right? Things like malware, spyware, ransomware, stuff like that, right? You can block that stuff off, right? Does that help? I mean, from a traffic perspective, you can move them directly into the cloud, and you can start to block them, and then whatever the policy you want to do, and because you have a firewall here, right?
Okay, we can. Okay, got it. Forward the traffic to Prisma, and on Prisma set the policy. Okay.
Yeah. The distinction here is here's your traditional firewall, but it's in the cloud now. And here's your connectivity piece on the bottom. Connectivity meaning all your WAN lanes, right, or your DIA circuits. And then the connectivity point is right over here that allows you to actually build a tunnel straight into access. And then once traffic flows into it, because it's going through this ION devices, Prisma Access, I'm sorry, the SD-WAN fabric, you have the ability to steer the application and the traffic any way you want it to.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it helps a
Awesome.
lot.
Yeah, if you want to dig into more details, we can definitely have a separate session.
Yeah,
And then we can get
okay.
into a lot more here. But in generally, your requirement, it can be definitely addressed by us. Right? All right, back to you, Tom.
I think this is all great stuff. A lot of good questions. We've got an inquisitive bunch.
That's good. Love it.
All righty. Any final questions? Perfect. Well, I can certainly, I don't want to speak out of turn or speak for SNL folks, but I can say unequivocally from the Palo Alto Network side, we greatly appreciate everyone joining today. We know likely that time is your most valuable asset, so we greatly appreciate it once again.
Yes.
Laura, anything from your side?
No, but just echoing that. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. We really appreciate it. And we hope you found everything informative. And you can follow up with our team or the Palo Alto team directly with any other questions you might have, or if you want to see something further, we can definitely do that for you guys.
All righty. Cheers, folks.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.